Welcome to this webinar that's been brought to you by the LEAP. The LEAP are an organisation that support arts and culture, although not in a traditional sense. They work directly with communities and provide them with all sorts of tools and resources to help build confidence, knowledge and skills, and they do this through both financial and non-financial support. This webinar forms part of that support and is part of a toolkit of webinars and learning resources to help creative people with great ideas unlock their talents and get those ideas off the ground so they can benefit communities. And we hope you enjoy this webinar. So today it's about getting started, 7 steps to getting started. It can be quite hard to understand all the different things that you might need to do at the start of a project, and a little bit overwhelming. You know you've got this idea, or you've started to develop some ideas, some projects and plans, that this webinar is to help you put those into action. And we hope you find this useful. We're just going to say a bit about why it's important. So we hope this gives a good overview and some broad reflection on key elements and building blocks that you need to try and start to have in place when you're getting your idea off the ground. So we'll walk through these steps, different steps that you can take to cover all bases and get that idea happening. And we hope that by setting it out in sort of 7 steps to getting started, you can think about how you can break some of the tasks involved into small chunks and make it manageable to get your project idea or venture off the ground. So we're going to cover a bit, just a summary. So this really is a summary of the steps to take when getting things moving. And it covers all sorts from research and planning and some tips and ideas on that, to idea refinement and getting your ideas a little bit more clarified and together. And we'll also touch on managing risks, seeking funding and other things. So this short webinar isn't going into detail in all of these. This is just a summary of the steps to take. And then what will happen is that we can give you various links and you'll get an understanding of the kinds of tools and bite-sized resources that you can be using to help you take these 7 steps. So we hope it gives a bit of an overview of the webinars that are coming up, and it gives you a way of reflecting on what you know already and what you're perhaps already good at, and where you might need to start developing those areas or ask for help and support. So let's take a look. So the first thing we're suggesting is that you take stock. Take a step back and you take stock. Why do you want to start this? And there was a webinar at the start called keeping motivated and what's motivating you. Do you understand what's motivating you? And that webinar can help you look at, why you want to start this. It just helps you communicate what you're doing and understand how you're going to keep motivated. But it's also good for you to think about what are you doing this for? Are you trying to solve a problem? Are you trying to develop your creative skills? Is this giving you the freedom to try and test something? Maybe it gives you some flexibility to change the way you work or change the way you do things. But what are you doing this for? And have you thought yet within your idea whether what you're creating is a service or a product? It can just whether or not the reason it's good to think these things through. Are you developing services that you'll be maybe delivering an event or delivering some workshops or doing something out in the community? Or are you developing a physical product of any kind? That might be a piece of art, or it might be food, or it might be an app. But the way you go about costing things out and the way you go about marketing things and the kinds of resources that you need at the start can vary. So just thinking through what is it you're developing and focusing on what that would be. What are your skills? Have you had time to look at that webinar on understanding what's motivating you? Because in there's a resource called the Myers-Briggs type indicator, and it's I guess a personality and skills tool that helps you reflect on your skills, strengths and attributes, and helps you work out when you're taking stock of things you know, where are your strengths? What are your skills? And what do you know? What are you good and ready to apply now? And what do you maybe need some help with or some training on? So do you know what your skills are? Do you know what you would like to do? You know, were you able to think in that webinar about, you know, what's the social issue that you're trying to address and how you're going to take your first 3 or 4 steps to getting that moving? Have you had time to think what you want to do yet? And in the scheme of your project idea, how are you developing this? Is it a short project? Is it something that you're doing sort of part-time around other things? Is it something you've got to do intensively, or that you even might plan to work on this full-time in future? If you can develop a way of earning a living whilst making a difference, you know, is that your goal, or is this a hobby, a project, or a kind of one-off solution? And just take stock, and once you know what it is you're trying to do, it's much more straightforward to put a plan together, to cost that plan, and take these next steps that we're going to talk about. So taking stock is step 1 for sure. And then how do you refine your idea? So we've got a few ways of helping you refine your ideas, and there's a webinar or a couple of webinars that can help you do this. There's one that helps look at problem solving and strengthening the quality of your ideas. So there's a tool called the problem tree, and it helps you understand, you know, what's the key issue you're trying to address, what are the root causes that are causing that problem, and then what are the societal or community effects that are happening, and how are you shaping your idea to address some of the you know, challenges or root causes to issues in your community by using your creative ideas. So there's ways of refining the quality of an idea, but then there's also ways of refining your idea from a sustainability point of view. And here it says, you know, using the business model canvas tool. And so we've a couple of examples within our webinar series where you can use different kinds of business model canvas tools. Some are very simple. So there's a 2-sentence business plan. If you're just getting started and you don't want to overwhelm yourself trying to write big business plans that you probably wouldn't need with a short project, or if you're just wanting to see if there's a viable way to turn this into something that could be sustainable and last beyond, you know, the lifetime of the project, then using tools like that, or using tools like the full business model canvas, are ways to help you refine your idea from the point of view of is it viable, who needs to be involved, and you know, it's a quick, short, sharp tool that can help you look at that. So thinking about, have you yet spent some time to refine your idea, the quality of it, and talk to other people about it to get their input? But also, are you thinking about your idea in the sense of, how might this work beyond the project? How might this work long term? And is there an income generation model in this, or a fundraising model, or whatever works for what you're doing, to repeat it and to build on it and to grow it? So that's step number 2. As part of refining your idea, and as part of evolving your projects, doing research is a really important step in what you're doing, because it will help you build evidence, and it will help you think about who else is doing this, that you could partner with or get some support from. And it will also help you understand what your community wants and get their interest and their buy-in for taking part, or for supporting what you're doing, or buying what you're doing. So doing research is key. And as part of your research, there's different ways to go about it. There's different questions you might ask, but you'll be thinking about, you know, who might want to be involved, who needs this, and who might buy your product or service. There's finding out who your competitors are or allies are, who else is out there, and what relationship might you need to develop with them or not, depending on who they are, where they are, how alike to what you're doing that their product, services, or activities are, and thinking about how you might stand out from other things that are going on. And you can also learn from the way other people are marketing and promoting and developing their activities or products or services, because it will give you a feel for how you might need to be looking at organising your information and where you might need to put it. Thinking through how easy it's going to be to get people involved. Here we're saying how easy is it to get a customer, but it might be how easy it is to get young people from your area to come along to your events or activities, or how easy it is to get the wider community involved in something that you're developing. Just thinking, how warm to this are your community or your potential customers if you're developing this long term now, and what are some of the ways you might be best to communicate with them. And there's an exercise in one of our webinars you might want to look up that's called a persona exercise, and personas help you get in the mindset of your customers or beneficiaries of what it is you're doing. And there are some tools there that can help you think about their needs and how and where they look for information and how best to communicate with them. And as part of all of this, thinking about, what makes you attractive to a customer, a beneficiary, or your wider community, by doing some research and talking to people and what they want and how they want to be approached, and what level they want to be involved in, maybe the planning, the design, if that's something that you're wanting your community to get actively involved in, creating a solid community-led culture of creativity and change. You might want them really involved, or you might want them to fill in surveys or do feedback or little vox pops, like a little tiny short piece of feedback on video or audio. There's lots of different ways you can reach out to people to help them tell you how they'll best react and how they'll best get involved in terms of what it is you're wanting to do, and find out what else they're up to that might be similar or different to what you have to offer them, so that you can really meet their needs and really stand out and communicate with them in a way they're going to spot the great activities, services or products that you're developing. Next, number 4, make a plan. There is the business model canvas type plan. That's a form of plan, but that's just, it's an overview and it's one aspect. A plan, whether that's a timeline, or whether that's a business plan, or whether that's an operational plan. There are different kinds of plans, and in looking at our business planning webinars, you'll be shown a range of tools to help you think through how you might develop a good roadmap of the things that you need to do to reach your goals from different perspectives, so that if you're just starting out and you need something simple, there's tools for that. But if you're a bit further down the line and you need some more thorough sort of business planning thinking, there are tools for that. So we hope those will be helpful. And some of the quickest and easiest ways to make a bit of a plan, to think, am I the right person to do this, and weigh up your strengths and the needs and some of the threats around what you're trying to do. There's something called a SWOT analysis. Is a very quick summary plan of what the strengths, weaknesses, and opportunities and threats are to getting started, and that tool's in the webinars. But ultimately, we recommend people think smart about this and be specific about what you want to do. Think about what can be measured, what kind of activities and outcomes are going to have some impact that you might measure. What's achievable, what feels achievable for you, and is achievable in your community, or with the skills and sort of the creative interest that you have, to help work out what's realistic, and then putting a timeline, make it time bound, so that you have a plan of what you're doing when, and it doesn't matter if things don't always go to plan. At least you can work out what didn't happen and why, and shift that timeline where it needs to shift. But starting out with your plan and setting out some milestones around what you're going to do in the first week, or in the first few months, or in the first 6 months, and making sure that you're clear on what tasks do I need to undertake, or do I need to ask for help with, and who's going to help me to make sure I can plan this project, do a good job of it, deliver all the things that need doing on certain days or in certain places, and make sure you're accountable, really, that you and any volunteers or other members of a group that you might be working with, or other freelancers and different people that you have involved, are clear on who's doing what by when, is always really important. Saves any surprises, and it helps you evaluate whether things are going to plan or not, and how to then make changes where they need to happen. So there comes a point, not for everybody, but for lots of people who we work with, where they want to progress what they're doing beyond that first trial or that initial project. And thinking about your legal structure is another step around getting started and evolving what you're doing. So there is a webinar that thinks about your governance, legal structure, and how you want to evolve what you're doing. It really does help you think about how you might manage and run your organisation, and what sort of structure you might want to have. There's something called a constituted group or an unincorporated association, which is a very simple legal structure for groups and projects to get started and form a little entity. Or people sometimes go to the lengths of setting up not-for-profit companies, like a company limited by guarantee with not-for-profit status, or community interest company, or some people might set up charities or co-ops. And so we'll be running a session that looks at that and what's involved, the pros and cons, and help you think these things through. As well as the governance of what you're doing, there's thinking about who's involved and their roles, and what levels of risk are involved in what you're doing, and how you're going to manage those risks. Might be managing them by special insurance. You might be managing those risks by having clear policies and procedures, as it says here. You might be managing those risks by doing certain risk assessments, and there's tools to have a look at to help you get started with things like that. So given that lots of people running projects are out there in the community, we just need to know that you're aware of the risks, you've mitigated against those risks, you've been able to communicate those with others, and have plans. It all links back to having plans in place to make sure that your projects, services, products run smoothly, and you're covered for any type of risk, and you're aware. In addition to policies and procedures, there's insurance, as I mentioned, and financial planning, and accountancy sometimes around this. So thinking about your legal structure is something that you might have on the horizon, but it might be something you need to do quite soon. There's no rush on this, and you can take your time, have a look at those webinars, talk to your other people that are supporting you, and get support to put these things in place. So you may already have had a little bit of funding to get your project idea off the ground, or you might just still be thinking through that idea. But we've got sessions on developing an income generation strategy, and we've got sessions on achieving funding and bid writing success as webinars that you might want to dip into. And so having a think, from the beginning, as part of your 7 steps to getting started, is knowing and understanding and doing some research into what are your investment and funding options to develop what you're doing. There's funding, there's fundraising, there's raising investment in other ways. When you first get started, it may be that some investment from the LEAP, or some investment from a local community or arts organisation, or doing some community fundraising might just be the start that you need to get going. But once you start to evolve what you're doing, and you think about how you might want to become sustainable, looking at how you're going to generate income, resources, and other forms of support to progress what you're doing will be key. And are you aware of any of those? Who could you talk to? Who can help you learn how they've gone about this? No doubt the LEAP and other partner organisations helping people in communities will be able to share tips and ideas on their experiences, as well as signpost you to the webinars on these things. And it's always good to be thinking about who do you know and how are you growing your contacts and networks, to think, where you might search for further information and access support through the webinars, through the LEAP and wider partner organisations. we can certainly signpost you to different opportunities, but just keeping a log and a list, and thinking through who you know that might be able to help you will be key to getting your ideas off the ground and getting them moving. And then just something else to think about really is, how practically are you going to run your project idea? Have you thought about the logistics around how this is going to work? Are you doing this from a home office or from home? Might you need to look at the space that you work in or operate out of, like a co-working space? Might you want to develop your own premises one day? What are your thoughts on how and where you're going to run this project? Are you going to need to hire something? Is it some ad hoc sessional rooms that you can go and run a workshop or an event in? But just thinking on the practicalities of where this will be. Will help you think, is there space in kind that you can look at to keep your costs down and to test something out, or will you have to factor in room hire as a cost for part of what you're doing? And or are there community centres that will let you come in to trial and test something with a view to then maybe you might need to pay in future? There's lots of ways of thinking about how you could test something and then evolve and grow it. And likewise, in addition to the space and the practicalities of how you'll run what you're doing, there's thinking about, the frequency of this, what's your vision for this? Is this an ad hoc project that you're doing from time to time? Is it something that you'll do, it might be monthly or quarterly as part of events or activities that are happening, in your community? Or is this something that you're looking at building and developing into a role or a job, future employment for yourself and others? Having a think about these things from the start helps you work out your direction of travel, who you might need to talk to along the way, and where you can ask for support, space, and juggling running your project alongside other work commitments, other volunteer commitments, studies and other stuff. And just being realistic, it goes back to those SMART objectives. Think what's realistic for you and how can you pace yourself to get this project or idea moving and get it off the ground. So those are our 7 steps. Quick recap. It may be that you've done some of these and you've can tick some elements off the list already, or it may be that you want to go and revisit a webinar that will help you check, have I done everything I needed to do, around governance and legal structures, for example, or around business planning and refining ideas. So you can always, even if you've done stuff, there's always more to learn. So do use those webinars that relate to you, where you find those to recap, review, and improve. But there might be some that you're looking at from a standing start, and when there's a lot to do, and there can feel like a lot to do getting a project off the ground, taking it in bite-sized chunks and thinking which are a priority right now. What's a priority for you in the next 3 to 6 months, or in the next week, wherever you're at, but what's the priority for you now? And take that leap, make a start, and use the webinars and use the support so that you can make that difference you want to make. We hope that summary has been useful, and we would really recommend that you dip back into where the tools and resources are being shared with you so that you can make the most of those and take the leap. And if you're needing additional help, and from our wider partners or from the Leap directly, our website and our social media channels just have additional support and additional ways to reach out and see how we can help. Hope that's been useful for you, and good luck with what you're developing.